Solomon made a treaty with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He then brought her to the city of David until he had finished building his own house, the house of the Lord, and the wall all around Jerusalem. It took him 13 years to build his own house. Solomon also built a house for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken as wife. Meanwhile the people sacrificed at the high places because there was no house built for the name of the Lord until those days. Although Solomon loved the Lord, and walked in the statutes of his father David, he sacrificed and burned incense at the high places. The high places were elevated on hilltop sites dedicated to worship of pagan gods. Ancient peoples often built their shrines on hilltops. In Mesopotamia, where the land is flat, they built artificial mountains in the shape of step pyramids called ziggurats. The Tower of Babel was probably such a ziggurat. Most of the Old Testament references to high places indicate a form of pagan worship forbidden to the Israelites. At times, the Lord's people, with the Lord's approval, worshipped him at elevated altars. The Israelites worshipped the Lord on a high mountain before the destruction of Shiloh and before Solomon took the Ark of the Covenant in Solomon's temple. Illustrated Dictionary of the Bible, page 481. Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and the Lord his God was with him, and exalted him exceedingly. Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the captains of thousands and of hundreds, to the judges, and to every leader in all Israel, and the heads of the fathers' houses. Then he and all the assembly with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon to sacrifice there to the Lord God of Israel, for that was the great high place, and the tabernacle of meeting was there, which Moses had made in the wilderness. David had brought up the ark of God from Kirjath-jearim to the place he had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it at Jerusalem. The bronze altar that Bezalel the son of Uri, and the son of Hur had made, he put before the tabernacle of the Lord, and Solomon and the assembly sought him there. Solomon went up to the bronze altar before the Lord, which was at the tabernacle of meeting, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. That night God appeared to Solomon in a dream, and said to him, "Ask. What shall I give you?" Solomon said to the Lord, "You have shown great mercy to David my father, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for him, and you have made me king in his place to sit on his throne. Now, O Lord my God, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I am a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. You have made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. And I am in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore, give to me an understanding heart, wisdom, and knowledge to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil, for who is able to judge this great people of yours?" Solomon asked for an understanding heart, wisdom, and knowledge to judge the Lord's people, that he may discern between good and evil. The request pleased the Lord that Solomon asked this thing. Then the Lord said to him, "Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked long life for yourself, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have asked the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding, wisdom, and knowledge to discern justice, behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been anyone like you before you, nor will any like you arise after you. And I have given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there will not be anyone like you among the kings all your days. Therefore, if you walk in all my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." After the Lord spoke to Solomon in a dream, and Solomon awoke, indeed, it was a dream. He left the high place that was at Gibeon from before the tabernacle of meeting, and he went to Jerusalem and reigned over Israel. He stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, offered up burnt offerings, offered up peace offerings, and made a feast for all his servants. 2 women, harlots by trade, came to King Solomon and stood before him. One woman said, "O my lord, this woman and I dwell in the same house, and I gave birth while she was in the house. Then it happened, the 3rd day after I had given birth, that this woman also gave birth. This woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. Then she arose in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while I slept, and laid him in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I rose in the morning to nurse my son, there he was, dead. But when I had examined him in the morning, indeed, he was not my son whom I had borne. Then the other woman said, No. But the dead one is your son and the living one is my son. And the first woman said, No. But the dead one is your son and the living one is my son. This they spoke before the king. Then King Solomon said, The one says, This is my son who lives, and your son is the dead one, and the other says, No. But your son is the dead one and my son is the living one. Then King Solomon said, Bring me a sword. They brought a sword before the king and he said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to one, and half to the other. Then the woman whose son was living spoke to the king, for she yearned with compassion for her son, and she said, O my lord, give her the living child and by no means kill him. But the other said, Let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him. Then the king answered and said, Give the first woman the living child and by no means kill him, she is his mother. When all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had rendered, they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to administer justice. King Solomon came to Jerusalem from the high place that was at Gibeon, from before the tabernacle of meeting, and reigned over all Israel, and these were his officials. The priest was Azariah the son of Zadok. The scribes were Elihoreph and Ahijah, the sons of Shisha. The recorder was Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud. Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the army. Azariah, the son of Nathan, was over the officers. Zabud, the son of Nathan, a priest and Solomon's friend, and Ahishur were over the household, and Adoniram, the son of Abdah, was over the labor force. Also, Solomon had 12 governors in charge of his districts over all Israel, who provided food for the king and his household. Each one made provision for 1 month of the year. They were also responsible for handling lesser administrative tasks and raising revenue for the crown. These are their names: Ben-Hur, in the mountains of Ephraim; Ben-Deker, in Machaz, Shulbim, Beth-Shemesh, and Elon Beth-Haman, cities that supplied food for Solomon and his royal household. Ben-Hezd in Arubboth, to him belonged Saka and all the land of Hepher. Ben-Abinadab, in all the regions of Dor, he had Tapheth the daughter of Solomon as wife. Bana, the son of Ahilud, in Tanach, Megiddo, and all Bethshean, which is beside Zertan below Jezreel, from Bethshean to Abel-Meholah to the other side of Joniam. Ben-Geber, in Ramoth-Gilead, to him also belonged the region or Argob in Bashan, 60 large cities with walls and bronze gate bars. Ahinadab, the son of Iddo, in Mahanaim. Ahimaaz in Naphtali, he also took Basemath the daughter of Solomon as wife. Bana, the son of Hushai, in Asher and Alath. Jehoshaphat, the son of Peruah, in Issachar. Shimei, the son of Elah, in Benjamin. This is not the Shimei, the son of Gera, who cursed David, for Solomon had him executed. Geber, the son of Uri, in the land of Gilead, in the country of Sihon king of the Amorites, and of Og king of Bashan. He was the only governor who was in the land. Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, and the governors provided food for King Solomon's table. There was no lack in their supply. They also brought barley and straw to the proper place, for the horses and steeds, each man according to his charge. Also, the king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones. He made cedars as abundant as the sycamores which are in the lowland. Solomon had horses imported from Egypt and Keve. The king's merchants bought them in Keve at the current price. They also acquired and imported from Egypt a chariot for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. So through their agents, they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria. Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude, eating, drinking, and rejoicing. Solomon reigned over all kingdoms from the river to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. The kings of the Philistines brought tribute and envoys came out of Egypt. They served Solomon all the days of his life. Ethiopia quickly stretched out her hands to God. The Lord fulfilled his promise to make Abraham's descendants numerous as the stars. He said to Abraham, "Look now toward heaven and count the stars if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So will your descendants be." The great expansion of Solomon's empire allowed the Jewish people to travel far in many regions outside the additional boundaries of Israel, spreading their knowledge of the one true living God among the pagan regions. Solomon had dominion over the entire region on the side of the river from Tiphsah even to Gaza, namely over all the kings on this side of the river, and he had peace on every side all around him. Judah and Israel dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree from Dan as far as Beersheba all the days of Solomon. God gave Solomon wisdom and exceedingly great understanding, and largeness of heart like the sand of the seashore. Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than all men were, than Ethan the Ezrahite was, and Herman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahal, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. Also he spoke of trees, from the cedar tree of Lebanon even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of animals, of birds, of creeping things, and of fish, and men of all nations from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom, came to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Solomon was determined to build a temple for the name of the Lord and a royal house for himself. He selected 70,000 men to bear burdens, 80,000 to quarry stone in the mountains, and 3,600 to oversee them. Then Solomon sent to Hiram, king of Tyre, asking for a man skillful to work in all types of metals, and he sent for materials and timber. Hiram was the king of Tyre and a friend of David before his death, and a friend of Solomon. He heard that the people had anointed Solomon king in place of his father, for Hiram had always loved David. Solomon sent to Hiram saying, "You know how my father David could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the wars which were fought against him on every side, and until the Lord put his foes under the soles of his feet. Now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, there is neither adversary nor evil occurrence. And I propose to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spoke to my father David saying, Your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, he will build the house for my name. As you have dealt with David my father and sent him cedars to build himself a house to dwell in, so deal with me. Behold, I am building a temple for the name of the Lord my God to dedicate it to him, to burn before him sweet incense, for the continual showbread, for the burnt offerings morning and evening on the Sabbaths, on the new moons, and on the set feasts of the Lord our God. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. The temple which I build will be great, for our God is greater than all gods. Still, who is able to build him a temple since heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain him? Who am I then, that I should build him a temple, except to burn sacrifice before him? Now therefore, send me at once a man skillful to work in gold and silver, in bronze and iron, in purple, who has skill to engrave with the skillful men who are with me in Judah and Jerusalem, whom David my father provided. Also, send me cedar and cypress and algum logs from Lebanon, for I know that your servants will be with your servants to prepare timber for me in abundance, for the temple which I am about to build will be great and wonderful. Indeed, I will give to your servants, the woodsmen who cut timber, 20,000 cores of ground wheat, 20,000 cores of barley, 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of oil. I will pay you wages for your servants according to whatever you say, for you know there is none among us who has skill to cut timber like the Sidonians." When Hiram heard the words of Solomon, he rejoiced greatly and said, "Blessed be the Lord this day, for he has given David a wise son over this great people. So Hiram answered in writing, and sent to Solomon saying, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel who made heaven and earth, for he has given King David a wise son endowed with prudence and understanding, who will build a temple for the Lord and a royal house for himself. I have considered the message which you sent me, and I will do all you desire concerning the cedar and cypress logs. My servant will bring them down from Lebanon to the sea. I will float them in rafts by sea to the place you indicate to me and will have them broken apart there, then you can take them away. Therefore, you will fulfill my desire by giving food for my household. Now, I have sent a skillful man endowed with understanding. I have sent Huram my master craftsman, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre. He is skilled to work in gold and silver, bronze and iron, stone, wood, purple and blue, fine linen, and crimson, and to make any engraving, and to accomplish any plan which may be given to him along with your skillful men and with the skillful men of my lord David your father. Now therefore, the wheat, barley, oil, and the wine, which my lord has spoken of, let him send to his servants. We will cut wood from Lebanon as much as you need, we will bring it to you in rafts by sea to Joppa, and you will carry it up to Jerusalem. Therefore, Hiram gave Solomon cedar and cypress logs according to all his desire. Solomon, year by year, gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, and 20 cores of pressed oil. Then Solomon numbered all the aliens who were in the land of Israel after the census in which David his father had numbered them, and there were found to be 153,600. Also, he made 70,000 of them bearers of burdens, 80,000 stone cutters in the mountain, and 3,600 overseers to make the people work. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he had promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty together. King Solomon raised up a labor force out of all Israel, and the labor force was 30,000 men. He sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shifts. They were a month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the labor force. Solomon had 70,000 who carried burdens, and 80,300 from the chiefs of Solomon's deputies, who supervised the people who labored in the work. Solomon commanded the people to quarry large stones, costly stones, and hewn stones to lay the foundation of the temple. Then Solomon's builders, Hiram's builders, and the Gebalites quarried them, and they prepared timber and stones to build the temple. In the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, on the 2nd day of the 2nd month, the month of Ziv, that Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah. This is the place where the Lord had appeared to his father David. It too was the place where David had erected an altar to the Lord, on the threshing floor of Ornan, the Jebusite. Mount Moriah was a sacred place as it is today. It was where Abraham had taken Isaac for sacrifice. Today, Mount Moriah is known as the Temple Mount, where the site of the Dome of the Rock, belonging to Muslims, lie on its hill directly north of Mount Zion, the location of David's tabernacle. David built houses for himself there, it was called the City of David, and he prepared a place for the Ark of God and pitched a tent for it in that place. The house that King Solomon built for the Lord had a vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house. The vestibule, or archway, was a roofed and partially enclosed section in the temple. He made for the house windows with slanted frames. Against the wall of the temple, he built chambers all around, against the walls of the temple, all around the sanctuary and the inner sanctuary. Then he made side chambers all around it. And the temple, when it was being built, was built with stone finished at the quarry, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the temple while it was being built. The doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. They went up by stairs to the middle story and from the middle to the third. So Solomon built the temple and finished it, and he paneled the temple with beams and boards of cedar. He built side chambers against the entire temple, they were attached to the temple with cedar beams. Then the word of the Lord came to Solomon saying, Concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to your father David. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people, Israel. Solomon built the temple and finished it. He constructed the temple on Mount Moriah, north of the city of David. He built the inside walls of the temple with cedar boards, from the floor of the cedar boards, from the floor of the temple to the ceiling he paneled the inside with wood, and he covered the floor of the temple with planks of cypress. Then he built the 20-cubit room at the rear of the temple from floor to ceiling with cedar boards. He built it inside as the inner sanctuary, as the most holy place. In front of it was the temple sanctuary. The inside of the temple was cedar, carved with ornamental buds and open flowers. All was cedar, there was no stone to be seen. Solomon prepared the inner sanctuary inside the temple to set the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was overlaid with pure gold, and the altar of cedar was overlaid with gold. Consequently, Solomon overlaid the inside of the temple with pure gold. He stretched gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. The whole temple he overlaid with gold until he had finished the entire temple. Also, he overlaid with gold the entire altar that was by the inner sanctuary. Inside the inner sanctuary he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. Then he set the cherubim inside the inner room, and they stretched out the wings of the cherubim so that the wing of the one touched one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. Also, he overlaid the cherubim with gold. Then Solomon carved all the walls of the temple all around, both the inner and outer sanctuaries with carved figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, and the floor of the temple he overlaid with gold, both the inner and outer sanctuaries. For the entrance of the sanctuary, he made doors of olive wood, the lintel, and doorposts. The 2 doors were of olive wood, and he carved on them figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold. He spread gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. Then for the door of the sanctuary he also made doorposts of live wood. The 2 doors were of cypress wood, 2 panels comprised one folding door, and 2 panels comprised the other folding door. Then he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them, and overlaid them with gold applied evenly on the carved work. Solomon built the inner court with 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv. In the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its details and according to all its plans. He was 7 years in building it. Solomon took 13 years to build his own house. He also built the house of the forest of Lebanon. He made the hall of pillars. Then he made a hall for the throne, the hall of judgment where he might judge, and it was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. The house where he dwelt had another court inside the hall, or like workmanship. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken as wife. All these were of costly stones cut to size, trimmed with saws, inside and out, from the foundation to the eaves, and on the outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, large stones, some 10 cubits and some 8 cubits. Above were costly stones, hewn to size, and cedar wood. The great court was enclosed with 3 rows of hewn stones and a row of cedar beams. So were the inner court of the house of the Lord and the vestibule of the temple. King Solomon sent and brought Huram, also, called Hiram, a master craftsman from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre. Huram was a bronze worker, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding, and he had skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. He came to King Solomon and did all his work. Huram did the work of the pillars, the laver, the basins, and the shovels. Huram set up the pillars by the vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the right and called its name Jachin, and he set up the pillar on the left and called its name Boaz. The tops of the pillars were in the shape of lilies. Therefore, the work of the pillars was finished. Huram made the sea of cast bronze. It replaced the bronze laver of the earlier tabernacle. The King James Version, 1 Kings 7, verse 23 uses the term molten sea, describing its method of manufacture. Illustrated Dictionary of the Bible. It was completely round. Below its brim were ornamental buds encircling it all around, all the way around the sea. The sea stood on the likeness of 12 oxen encircling it all around, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east, and the sea was set upon them. All the oxen back pointed inward. This laver contained 2,000 baths, or about 11,500 gallons of water. In 2 Chronicles 4 verse 5, it says that the sea contained 3,000 baths or 17,500 gallons. Huram made 10 carts of bronze. Every cart had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the laver were supports of cast bronze beside each wreath. Its opening inside the crown was round. The workmanship of the wheels was like the workmanship of a chariot wheel, their axle pins, rims, spokes, and their hubs were all of cast bronze. On the top of the cart, at the height, it was perfectly round. Thus, he made 10 carts. All of them were of the same mold, one measure, and one shape. He made 10 lavers of bronze, each laver contained 40 baths. On each of the 10 carts was a laver. He put 5 carts on the right side of the house, and 5 on the left side of the house. Huram also made the court of the priests, and the great court and doors for the court, and he overlaid these doors with bronze. He set the sea on the right side of the house and toward the southeast. Huram made the lavers, pots, shovels, and the bowls for the temple. He finished doing all the work that he was to do for King Solomon and for the house of the Lord. He finished every part of the 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the 2 pillars, the 10 carts, and 10 lavers on the carts, 1 sea, and 12 oxen under the sea, the pots, shovels, and the bowls. All these articles which Huram made for King Solomon and for the house of the Lord, were of burnished bronze. In the plain of Jordan, the king had them cast in clay molds between Sukkah and Zerdah. Solomon had all the furnishings made for the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, the table of gold on which was the showbread, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left in front of the inner sanctuary, with the flowers and the lamps and the wick trimmers of gold. The basins, trimmers, bowls, ladles, and the censers of pure gold were made. The hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner room, the most holy place, and for the doors of the main hall of the temple, were gold, and all were complete. Therefore, all the work that King Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished, and Solomon brought in the things, which his father David had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the furnishings. He put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. Thanks for listening. If you have been blessed by this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.